Greetings to everybody. I am the storyteller, and I am come to put you to sleep with these terrifying tales from the deep web. Before we begin, please make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Please share your location and the time you're watching this in the comment section. I'd love to know. Get relaxed and comfy when you're ready. Let me share a story with you. Let's be honest, I wasn't the most popular kid in the school when I was a senior. The weirdos that stuck about ostracized and discussed topics that most people didn't comprehend were myself and my friends. To use their own words, they were the ones who introduced me to the deep web, that area of the internet where you can be invisible and do anything you want. Naturally, that piqued my interest. Only commodities that are not available in the ordinary market, drugs, stolen goods from collectors, pirated shows, TV shows, movies, and other similar content were purchased by my buddies via the deep web. However, I was looking for more. I became intrigued to learn all the dark secrets of the deep web after they brought up the topic to me. I began my investigation and discovered many unsettling tales of things I never would have thought could be found online. Stories about odd websites, fetishes buying and selling organs, and even assassination contractors were among the ones I came across. I obviously didn't want to take part in any of that, but I was excited by the prospect of looking into an underground occult realm. It seemed like a doorway to an other reality to me. My daily pattern was deadly. I always woke up at the same time, went to the same dull classes with the same people, went home, played video games, did my homework, went to bed, and then did it all over again. Was this something that happened to anyone else? This, in my opinion, was a fantastic chance to see what other possibilities were. I therefore concluded it was time to venture into the shadowy depths of the deep web after receiving numerous warnings about hackers and other frightening material. It had been over a week since I discovered that the deep web existed. When I eventually made the decision to log in, it was easy because I already knew what I needed to accomplish. I was thrilled, thinking I would see some spooky stuff, but all I could find were websites about drugs and conspiracy theories that didn't pique my curiosity. I was very let down because I didn't even use drugs or give a damn about that government rumors. However, I continued to search because I was determined to locate everything I had read about on the black web. When I finally arrived at a nameless website, it attracted my eye. When I initially saw a black screen and assumed it was a broken link, a chat box with a person identifying himself as the administrator appeared. He wrote, "Congratulations. You found the worst place on the internet." Instead of being afraid, I glanced at the television, perplexed, and I eventually only managed to reply, "Great," since I was at a loss for words. Since I wasn't there to strike up a conversation with strangers, I just asked him what he liked about the website, but he didn't respond. My mind started racing with frightening ideas right away, but there was no going back now. I entered again out of necessity to find out what was on that website, perhaps a little nervously, but immediately the chat window ended, and a new screen appeared. Unexpectedly, I discovered that I was viewing a video and that 5 other individuals were chatting next to it. All of them were anticipating something thrilling. The video was in black and white and displayed a tiny space with a wooden chair at its middle. After some time, a man was shoved inside when the door opened. Wearing only a pair of black boxer shorts and blindfolded, the man was followed by a woman with a mask over her face and a black outfit. The mood was somber, and there, a lot of tension existed. My adrenaline was through the ceiling. Personally, I was eagerly awaiting. Now what would occur? My eyes couldn't leave the screen. That my curiosity and sense of morbidity had me captivated. I was still unsure if I was prepared for what was about to occur, but I was there, on the brink of the abyss, curious to see what else this dark world had to offer. I knew it was a risky game, but the night was only getting started, and my fascination outweighed my worry. Even so, I thought I had gone over a line I would never be able to go over again. When the woman suddenly produced a knife, she sliced the man's blindfold and pushed him against a chair. He didn't object, and I could see why when his eyes were shown. It appeared that he had been intoxicated, as though he had no faculties. On the one hand, I was aware that this was wrong, and my conscience was screaming for me to contact someone or leave. But I was stuck there, unable to turn away from the sight, and I was waiting to see what would happen next. The woman then moved toward the camera and put the knife to the man's throat. A gentleman in the chat channel typed, "Cut her finger off," while the woman stood in front of the webcam. My mouth fell and my hands clenched into fists. Was he telling the truth? Was I going to see a group of sickos celebrate as this was done to a man? I felt queasy, especially after I watched the woman nod her head for approval. Then she took hold of the man's hand and decapitated one of his fingers with deliberate motion. Even though the man moaned, he was unable to defend himself as blood spurted from the wound. I was really bewildered. I was trembling as I swung the cursor to the X because I was starting to lose it, but I resisted the temptation to leave. Strange, part of me was terrified, but the other part of me was intrigued and genuinely eager about how it would all turn out. The woman went on with her assignment. The show appeared to be enjoyable to her. People were leaving comments in the chat room, asking for more information and offering novel treatments, and I felt sick to my stomach at that precise time. I felt terrible for the poor man. Between each finger on his hand, the woman took her time cutting it off. Then, while he was still alive and conscious, she chopped his wrists and then his forearms, rendering him unable of doing anything due to whatever it was they gave him. The dread and repulsion I initially experienced, however, started to change into a sort of pleasure, an adrenaline surge. To my utter dismay, after witnessing him collapse to the ground, covered in blood, with both arms gone and his legs severed to his knees, the chat room burst into ecstasy. People were enthusiastically posting notes, offering ideas, and more, requesting additional concerts of that kind. To my amazement, I became enmeshed in the issue. This was more challenging than any video game I've ever played. I've never played or attended any dull class. I believed that this was what I desired. This is the darkness I was seeking. This is the actual thing. As soon as I realized I had to participate in this, I typed "end it" into the chat window. In that moment, she gave him one final smile before carefully and slowly dragging her knife over the man's throat. The man was rendered insensitive by the gruesome spectacle of blood spurting out. In the chat room, people congratulated the torturer and made remarks about how, even beginning to organize the next screening, how thrilling the experience had been. After that, the woman left the body behind as though it were nothing more than a plaything to amuse oneself with. I was so engrossed that I hastily noted the date of the next incident. I knew that this was going to become a part of my life. I was going to be involved in something much more significant, thrilling, and above all morality and regulations. The deep web was a fantastic new love of mine. Currently, at college, I'm further into this realm than before. I've seen stuff that most people would find frightening. My daily routine was disrupted in a way I never would have thought possible, and now I feel motivated, much like a high school kid who accomplished. Avoid boredom and discover his sinister calling. In an area where most people sense dread, I see excitement and I can't get enough. On the other hand, I feel more alive every day in this pit of perils and secrets that is the deep web. Allow me to share with you a terrifying anecdote that is both entirely real and, to be honest, one of my worst life blunders. Follow my advice and avoid the dark and deep webs. Both locations are unsettling and violent. I must give you some background so that you can comprehend why I say this. I ended my relationship with my first girlfriend during my first semester of college. Since high school, we had been in a committed relationship and couldn't be separated. So much so that over the 6 years of our relationship, we only had one little argument, but when she and her family relocated to a different state, everything changed. I still find it hard to believe it happened. As you may guess, I had true emotional turmoil during the next few months. After going to class, coming home, and doing my homework, I would lock myself in my room and cry. Constantly. With no way out, I felt stuck in a loop and was positive I wouldn't see her again. Not anytime soon. However, I finally recovered from that awful despair, as is frequently the case. I started to spend more time with friends and put the sadness behind me, but occasionally the memories would still get to me. I one day returned home feeling particularly down after a bunch of pals brought up my ex. Because I needed a diversion, I chose to forget and have an online conversation. I ended up on Reddit after thinking about her for a bit and searching for anything that would amuse me. However, nothing I tried worked for me. However, I was drawn to one post. Something called the deep web was discussed. My curiosity prompted me to click on it right away. Some of the outlandish claims made in the post on the deep web seemed too good to be true. There were allegedly places to obtain narcotics, contract murderers, strange fetishes, human trafficking, and classified government records. Although I had no interest in fetishes or anything illicit, I was curious to find out what that area of the internet that I knew nothing about was actually about. When most people told me that I required a special browser called Tor, I mustered the confidence to install it. I just wanted to get my thoughts straight and stop thinking about Kayla in the end. I must admit that I'm a bit of a geek and understood how to accomplish these things, so I just needed a few clicks to get Tor installed and operational. After logging in, I discovered the hidden wiki along with further pages on conspiracy theories, governmental secrets, and other topics. At the time, nothing sounded particularly spooky, so I began looking through their available categories: pornography, adult content, drugs, and more. When I clicked on drugs, I was shocked to find at least 100 connected websites. I had no intention of making any purchases. I wasn't interested in getting into legal issues, but my curiosity was piqued. This was a new world, and I was curious. My quest continued after that. I moved on, and among the other things I saw, I came across forums that talked about illicit pornography and torture. I was struck by reality at that time. I must admit that this site was far frightening than I had anticipated, but perhaps the magazine wasn't entirely incorrect, and everything I had heard about the deep web was being verified in front of my eyes. I became more curious, but I also felt a chill go down my spine as I wondered what I was getting myself into. Like opening a package of terrifying surprises, the scariest thing was I wanted to keep searching. I was aware that this was all sick and dangerous, but I felt compelled to continue my research, even though my intuition was telling me to stop. I came upon a collection of links that were unrelated to the websites I was familiar with, those standard .com or on-net listings. These bizarre letter and number combinations ended in onion, and naturally, this caught my attention right away. When the page took a long time to load, I assumed it was a scam, but when I clicked on one of these links, I was met with a red link and a spooky smiling face staring at me. The alarms went off in my head at that moment, but I continued clicking because I was curious. You may assume that what I saw next was a hack or a virus, but it was actually much worse. The location was a gloomy feast of dread. Images and recordings of rapes, tortures, and even hangings. When I say that some of them weren't even of legal age, you understand. I have previously witnessed some quite unsettling things, such as hideous mishaps, but this was something else entirely. I wouldn't describe myself as easily afraid, but this drove me to the edge, especially once I saw that there was a live feed link. I understand that many people may believe that such incidents are rare, but the harsh truth is that there are people on our globe that indulge in committing these horrible crimes and horrors. Upon realizing what I was about to see, I quickly deleted the Tor browser from my computer and shut off the website. That was really too much for me to handle. For a considerable amount of time, I actually didn't log into my computer. Further investigation on the dark web revealed that many people believe these tortures were only urban legends, but I knew what I had witnessed, and it was not a fairy tale. Regarding those, if you're considering exploring the deep web or the black web, take heed to my recommendations. Do not do that, especially if you're inexperienced. Despite my youth, naivete, and perhaps foolishness, I would have liked never to have stepped foot on that ground. As a result, if you're interested in the dark web, for whatever reason, I'll tell you this: avoid going. It is a path you do not wish to follow. This world has certain things that are better left. One of them is the darkness there, which is undiscovered. Let me tell you, I was astonished, perhaps not in the way you might have thought, to have only had one girl in my life. I have always been a die-hard, capital N nerd, the kind of geek that enjoys video games, anime, and anything else that keeps me inside and away from other people. I was practically ignorant of the concept of friendship. In fact, I was almost alienated by it. My parents used to get concerned when they noticed me outside watching cartoons while confined to my room. The youngsters from the neighborhood laughed and played. There were moments when they would gaze out the window, and I'm sure they wondered what was wrong with their little Miguel, who wouldn't even venture outside to get some sunlight. They eventually grew accustomed to the concept, though, and that was that. Surprisingly, I made a friend in an online game while working for myself. We eventually got along quite well, talking every day and having similar interests. That was a friendship in my eyes. Maintaining the same social distance as when I was a child, I work from home. Although I'm a programmer, I don't always create websites. Anyway, let's go back to the narrative. I got into the car one day to take my clothing to the dry cleaners, and as I was standing at a red light, searching everywhere for my phone, abruptly the car began to move a little from side to side. How in the hell? I pondered as I looked around the dashboard. When I noticed a girl lying on the hood, I was shocked and decided to put the brakes on and run. "Hi, are you all right? Do you require assistance?" A little perplexed, I questioned as I walked up. She looked up and apologized, saying, "I was looking at my phone and didn't see you." In that instant, I was enthralled. She was the most stunning girl I had ever seen, with sparkling blue eyes, cute freckles on her cheeks and nose, and a grin that really put me at ease. "Are you sure you're okay?" I persisted, still transfixed by her eyes. "I am flawless, yes." "I appreciate your concern," she answered, grinning and tucking a lock of hair behind her ear. Within, I forgot all about my social anxiety at that moment, and for the first time in my life, I felt at ease approaching someone outside of my family and asking her out to coffee. I was shocked to learn that she agreed. That afternoon was incredible. She turned out to be a bit of a nerd as well, loving the same anime as me and being an animal lover who even volunteered at a shelter. However, there was another thing that really got to me. Her parents had died when she was a young child. Even though I was unaware of it at the time, she was deeply affected by the incident. While we were conversing, the waiter brought her a different coffee for what she had ordered, and she became so agitated that she refused to switch it, despite her request for a cappuccino. The server served her a long Americano instead. Instead of insisting that he alter her order, though, the girl reddened right away and tried to vanish. "God, please don't fire him for this," she muttered, covering her face with her hands. "Don't worry," I added, laughing. "It's only a mistake and nobody is having any problems." I attempted to soothe her, but it seemed like she was being psychologically impacted by everything in her life. One night after we started dating, I was in a really bad mood and texted Carolina nearly without realizing it. "Hey, I wrote back to let you know how much I miss you." She started a heated conversation that I honestly didn't expect we would have when she texted me back to say she missed seeing me, too. After we finished talking, I made the bold decision to ask her to email me some nude photos. She was gorgeous, and as her boyfriend, I couldn't see why I couldn't ask, despite her initial reluctance. Carolina eventually agreed and emailed me roughly 4 pictures. After that, for a few days, everything appeared to go as usual. She stayed at my house all night, house twice, and on one of those occasions, I made her a lovely meal. Naturally, I ended up burning the chicken when I attempted to cook it. I got Chinese food so as not to let her down, and we snuggled down on the couch to watch our favorite anime. It was a wonderful evening, and I wish it had continued. When Carolina left, I was by myself at home and chose to play a favorite online video game. My own. Luis, my gaming buddy, was online and said hello. "Miguel, how is it going?" He had just logged on when he started asking me questions with his typical curiosity, and I, distracted as usual, it said simply, "Yeah, pretty much fine, but then without me." Realizing he had thrown a bombshell that would completely alter my life. I know you no longer use the dark web, but I still go there, and I found some images of your girl there, he remarked with a naturalness that made me shiver. My heart stopped. "Which photos?" Disguising the panic that was already beginning to grip me, I asked. And then, Luis's remarks came as a sudden shock. The images of Carolina he had supplied me were, as it turned out, making the rounds on the dark web, and, to make matters worse, receiving a lot of attention. It was amazing. What was it like? Is it feasible that those private images were visible to the public? Even worse, I recalled that Carolina was also knowledgeable about computers, so if she ever saw those pictures, yes, I couldn't wait and I would be accountable. My next action was to track down the hacker who had distributed these pictures, as it was obvious. Hadn't been me. Since I'm somewhat tech-savvy, I had to go to work. I stayed up all night attempting to find a man until I finally got a hold of his computer. But when I attempted to remove the pictures from his hard drive and the accounts where he had uploaded them, I received a frightening communication. Do you honestly believe that I am so foolish? So accept my offer, and I'll take your pictures. I'll need you someday. Answer in the chat window. Even though I had no idea what he was talking about, I received a message from him saying, "Good talk. See you later." I had assumed Carolina was secure, but she had already discovered that the pictures were all over the internet. When she trusted me, I was able to do something similar for her, she said over the phone. It was clear that she didn't believe me, even though I was upset and said that it wasn't like that and that there had been a mistake. Eventually, the pictures were removed. However, even at that point, it was too late. Carolina never forgave me, and we later lost touch. But even though I didn't know what he wanted from me or when he would need me, I still owed this guy money, and I was afraid that he was considering me. I hope that it remains that way, even though I haven't received any instructions from him as of yet. However, the worry in my chest won't go away, and I always wonder when he will return. I would want to share with you my experience in the Mariana's Web, a location that many people believe to be a myth, but that I can attest to being genuine. For the uninitiated, this is considered to be the darkest area of the deep web. Let me assure you that those who assert that the Mariana's Web is a myth and that the stories of torture in crimson rooms are untrue are completely mistaken. I know this because I was a hacker back in the day. I was so good that I had access to files and other things that very few people else did. I could hack bank accounts, government records, and even streetlights. I knew it was all wrong, but at the time I felt like a genius and believed I could get away with it if I was careful. It was an enormous adrenaline rush, but it was also dangerous. In the summer of 2015, I made the decision one evening to investigate a section of the internet that most people couldn't even fathom. To get to the Mariana's website, I spent days researching, gathering information, and following the required procedures. I won't go into the specifics of how it's done, but I will say that it has a lot to do with encryption and the need for encryption to access specific locations. People believe that accessing the dark web with simply a specialized browser is simple. But let me warn you that it's far more difficult than it seems. When I finally succeeded in accessing this well-known Mariana's website, the first things I saw were a few drug websites. Websites that sold credit cards that had been stolen, and some hideous fetish websites. Fortunately, I didn't find such items interesting, so I ignored them. In the top right corner of my computer, I saw a message that read, "Hello, new user, you have an invitation." Due to my confusion, I naively clicked on the message, which brought up a blank screen with just one link. The format gave the impression that it was a video. I didn't fear being hacked because my computer was extremely secure and would surprise anyone who attempted to enter it. So, believing I was in control of the screen, I chose to click on the link. A motionless image with an odd sound, like a frequency that made your hair stand on end, eventually appeared on the screen after a long loading time. Because of the poor video quality, all I could see was what looked to be a living room. As a door opened, a man wearing a scary mask emerged, took a seat on a chair, and started introducing himself. "I am Alpha, and I have a reputation for killing a lot of people in a variety of fascinating ways." I understood that he was having problems as he discussed his preparations for assassination. He started talking about how he always got away with killing the people he chose to kill. This was excessive, but I've had a good deal of experience on the dark web and have seen some weird things. My body was rushing with adrenaline, and my heart was thumping frantically. I cannot take my eyes off of it, knowing that this did not portend anything positive. The scenario grew increasingly alarming, and I was unsure of my options. Alpha got up and left the room after watching that odd movie for a while. Upon his return, he carried a folder, which he opened in front of the camera. Numerous photographs of his victims, which weren't your typical photos, were included in the folder. People who had been brutally murdered, some stabbed, some beaten, were shown. He displayed some very graphic pictures. It featured a woman getting struck by a truck. Speaking about his inventive ways of tormenting people, Alpha stated that he preferred lengthy and agonizing deaths. When I noticed that there was a comment section as I was listening, I decided to post a remark in my moment of insanity. I typed, "You're a sick guy," because I believe it would help me get out of this situation, as though it would somehow take away his sense of control. But in actuality, that was the worst thing I could have done. My screen went dark and a chat box emerged in a matter of seconds. There was a message inside the box saying that I was a fool for typing that. I assumed it was a bot trying to frighten me, but something inside of me told me it wasn't a machine. Rather, it was a genuine human. Thus, I wrote, "Who are you?" Quickly, the response appeared. "My name is Alpha." That caused my hair to stand on end. Out of the blue, I informed him I was going to show the tape and report him to the police. There was a brief pause before he answered, "Oh, well, then I'll have to kill you." Though I was totally mistaken, I assumed he was joking. My blood froze when he typed something after that. My complete address. My breath left me when I read the message. It was only the beginning. Alpha continued by saying that he knew my parents, friends, teachers, and everyone else in my life. In total disbelief, I questioned how in the world he knew so much about me. He ended his writing with the words, "See you later." Following that, my computer abruptly went down, and no matter how hard I attempted to restart it, I was unable to get it to function once again. I kept everything to myself and let it all fade away because I knew that talking about it with my parents would make me a complete disaster. I thought I was over all of this after a few days. But when I returned home a few weeks later, my mother began asking me strange questions about a guy who had been to inquire about me. She mentioned that a strange man had stopped by the house. But fortunately, my mother is not idiotic. She told her she was in the wrong place. He tried to get her to come in, but she just refused, so the guy eventually walked away. I've been certain ever since that it was Alpha or a family member of his. The good news is that this has never happened again. I suppose the man simply let it go or remained adamant that this wasn't my residence. The Marianas Web is a site that makes you realize that one mistake may wreck your life. And I still wonder what would have happened if my mother hadn't been home that day. Hi there, I'm Jamie, and I'm going to inform you of something that will make your blood ice. I've been employed by a corporation that is committed to eliminating dangerous websites for a long time, but I can't give you the name. Additionally, I discovered a collection of what are referred to as red rooms a few years ago. More precisely, the 5 authentic red rooms of the deep web. It is not possible to find them by searching the internet. If you attempt to click on any of those links, your computer will only be infected with strange viruses. These rooms have a lot of myths, some of which may be genuine and eerie, while others may simply be scams. Accessing the actual red rooms requires knowing someone who runs them. You can't simply log in using a browser. It's a difficult process, and you need to win over some of the moderators who run these rooms. I was fortunate enough to make friends with one of them. Something along these lines is the dynamic. If you can enter the first red room, pay with Bitcoin, and demonstrate your seriousness, you may be granted entry to the second, and so forth. Here I was excited and interested, prepared to venture into the unknown. I clicked to go into the first room, but a dark screen with an access code request appeared. With a sprint, I typed my 4 numbers there, and to my amazement, I was granted entry. It had been too simple, so I decided to go on. The screen was covered in black video boxes, some of which had unsettling titles like Tiffany or Watch Me Terrify. I made the snap decision to, first, watch as I terrorize Kara. A man was seen recording with what looked to be a phone at the beginning of the video. He was within I could see the living room furnishings, including a leather couch and bookcases, concealed behind a door. He was speaking in a language I couldn't understand when the doorknob abruptly started turning. After I heard the sound of keys, a girl entered. She was petite and appeared to be in her early 20s. She was dressed in a green nurse's uniform. I heard a man cry, "Don't move," out of nowhere. The girl froze like a deer caught in a car's headlights. Clearly, she was rather frightened. She then let her keys fall to the floor, and just then, a man wearing all black with. She was followed by a ski mask with a large hammer. The man smacked her twice in the head with his raised arm. She collapsed to the ground, soaking the white carpet with blood. Watching the video and learning that there were a lot of individuals that adored particular type of morbidity. What was most unsettling was when the man shouted at the man behind the door, saying, "I heard something that sounded like Don," and to my dismay, both cameras stopped working. Even though this was the most unsettling thing I had ever seen, I didn't believe it could be an act. What I desired, to instantly stop viewing, but for some reason, I kept wanting to see the next film. The following video, Tiffany Freaks Out, was even more unsettling when I first started watching it. The camera was trained on a park where a woman with blue and brown hair was jogging calmly down a track with a man in pursuit. His features were exotic, and he was seated in a vehicle whose windshield is cracked. He never revealed his face, though, and wore black gloves. He was talking and chuckling as the woman ran, and I wanted to yell at her to flee from him via the screen. To avoid the park, but I knew there was nothing I could do anyhow. I couldn't be heard by her. When the screen abruptly went dark, I assumed the video was done, but I was completely mistaken. The man returned with what seemed to be night vision, looking green and slightly hazy.